Faisal in Delhi, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much.
There you sit in India's capital, but I'm sure your thoughts are with the people of Kashmir. What are the latest reports you are hearing of what is happening in your home territory in terms of the curfew and the lockdown? Because the Indian authorities say they've begun to gradually ease it.
It's the 8th day of curfew, and the news which I am getting from Kashmir is that it continues to be the same. Around 8 million people continue to be under incarceration. Roads are deserted, markets are closed. It's very hard to move around. The communication system is completely down. Telephone lines are not working, mobile phones. People who are living outside Kashmir have not been able to talk to their families for the last 8 days. There is shortage of food materials. People are not able to figure out what's happening. There has been absolute clamp down on the protests, and the presence of security forces has been unprecedented. It's a warlike situation. People are unable to reach out to their relatives. Political leaders are under arrest, and all political leaders. The surprising part of this crackdown has been that pro-India as well as the separatist leadership, all of them are under arrest this time. It's a situation, a scene completely out of a partition novel.
Well, you say that all local politicians in Kashmir are under arrest or facing intimidation, and yet, of course, you're speaking to me from Delhi, and I happen to know that in the last week you have been able to go to Srinagar and attend political meetings. So it suggests to me that perhaps you're exaggerating the extent of the control from India just a little bit.
Most of the political leaders who belong to my political party and all other political parties have been detained. I am the only person from the all-party meeting which met there in Srinagar on 4th who is free, and honestly speaking, I'm ashamed of myself that I'm free at a time when the entire leadership of Kashmir is under, in jail, and all the 8 million people have been imprisoned.
Do you think, in all honesty, when this interview is done, and perhaps over the next few days you'll try to go back to Kashmir, do you think you will be free for long?
Police has come to my home a couple of times after I left, and it's also a story in itself the way I reached airport and came to Delhi. Because of communication breakdown, maybe people could not communicate to their higher-ups about my escape from the airport, but I'm very much apprehensive that soon after I leave from here, I may be detained, like anybody else.
It seems you are calling for calm, because I saw this quote from you just the other day. You say the government seems to be preparing for casualties numbering 8 to 10,000. Sanity demands that we don't give anyone a chance for a massacre. My appeal is that we should all stay alive, and then we shall fight back. So for right now, you're telling people to stay home.
I think this is a sign of maturity of the people. 200,000 security forces out to kill anybody who is going to raise a voice of dissent. So I think this is a sign of maturity that people are not reacting the way. But I am sure that Kashmiris will give a more calibrated, more seasoned, long-term, organic, sustainable response to what has been done by Indian state. This act of indignation which has been done to the people of Kashmir, I am sure this will not go unprotested.
The court today has issued a ruling saying that it won't intervene in the imposition of the curfew and the lockdown. It says that the government has every right over the next few weeks to impose this policy and to let things stabilise. So it's not clear the court's going to be on your side.
If the parliament represents the majoritarian sentiment that we hope, then courts should represent the minority sentiment. That's our understanding. As of now, we are about to challenge these articles. Some of the political parties have already filed their petitions. I know it's going to be a long battle. It's not going to be easy for the Supreme Court also to undo what a majoritarian government, a bully government, has done in this country. I know it's going to be hard for Supreme Court justices to stand for the cause of truth.
He makes the point that by imposing a form of direct rule, let's face it, direct rule from Delhi to Jammu and Kashmir, he says there will be a lot more development. All citizens will be guaranteed their rights, but he says there'll be new investment in infrastructure. The people of Jammu and Kashmir will have more opportunities, more jobs, and in the long run, it will benefit the people.
I think this is a completely mischievous narrative that has been built around abolishing of Article 370. If you look at India, which is now 28 states, Jammu and Kashmir state has developmental indicators better than many of such states. If you look at the levels of equality in Jammu and Kashmir this time, if you look at longevity, if you look at the GDP per capita, if you look at the total fertility rates and other demographic indicators, it might surprise the people that Jammu and Kashmir has better indicators than many such states which do not have such protections. Article 370 was responsible. It was the protection basically for very successful land reforms which took place in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and such land reforms have not been done anywhere else in the country.
But if I may say so, it was also, sorry to interrupt, but Article 370 also, in a sense, ring-fenced some deeply sexist policies and constitutional realities in Jammu and Kashmir, and as Mr. Modi has said, he hopes that people will see that, for example, the Kashmir Permanent Residence Law, which your Jammu and Kashmir state had imposed, bars female residents from property rights in the event that they marry a person from outside the state. And Mr. Modi makes the point that's not right, and by imposing direct rule, women will benefit. That law has been an
evolving law. That has been an evolving law, and over a period of last so many years, there has been a constant debate in Jammu and Kashmir that we need to give those protections, those rights to women. And the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir has already settled that matter, and those protections, those rights have been extended.
Yeah, well, my question then is, where do you go from here, Mr. Faisal? Because, as I say, you had a reputation when you formed your party of being a pragmatist, a technocrat. You'd worked at the senior level in the Indian civil service for many years yourself. You argued against separatism and for creating a political space for dialogue. That space seems to have disappeared.
That space has disappeared, not for us, but for everybody else. And, you know, people like me who wanted to find some meaning in electoral politics, who believed that some sort of resolution to this dispute is still available within the framework of Indian Constitution, I think all those people have been slapped on 5th August. And people like me now understand that there are only two ways to do politics in Kashmir. You will either have to be a stooge or you will have to be a separatist. Everybody who now wants to champion the larger political rights of Kashmiri people, I'm sure the trajectory, the path for them has changed, and the methodology has changed. I mean, now I think if people have been asking for right to self-determination, I think that framework is the only framework now which people will be ready to listen to. They will not be ready to listen to anything which is within the framework of the Constitution.
You said something very interesting earlier. You said you felt something of a sense of shame for the fact that you were not arrested, that you're still free when so many of your fellow Kashmiris, certainly in politics, have been detained. Do you also feel a sense of shame that for so many years you were an insider inside the Indian civil service, arguing that it was less important to pursue a path of separatism, more important to concentrate on things like supplying clean water, infrastructure, development? Do you think you got it wrong? Do you think ultimately you are part of the problem?
I have to confess today before the world that we were trying to sell a wrong product to people of Kashmir, and we have been snubbed on 5th August 2019 when this unilateral assault on the constitutional identity of the state was done without taking any of the stakeholders on board, by resorting to complete military might and suppressing the voices of the people in Kashmir. And you know, Modi just got his way through, just bulldozed his way through into Kashmir without caring for what Kashmiris would think about this.
So what's it to be now, Mr. Faisal? If you're no longer prepared to be, in your own word, a stooge, and moderation appears to be impossible in the Kashmir of today, are you going to back the militants? We've already seen key militant players who have strong links in Pakistan. I'm thinking of Maulana Abdulaziz, the guy who was a prayer leader in the Red Mosque in Islamabad. He's now said jihad is obligatory for Muslims in Pakistan because our Kashmiri brothers and sisters are waiting for our help. Is that the sort of language you can now identify with?
The way voices of political moderation have been silenced in Kashmir, I'm extremely worried that it will give credence to the extremist elements, and extreme ideologies are going to flourish in our part of the world. But when it comes to myself, I believe that a sustained, non-violent political mass movement will have to be launched in Kashmir. It may take a lot of time, but my belief in non-violence stems from the fact that most of the political movements in the rest of the world have succeeded as long as they have been non-violent. And I believe that we are going to fight for the rights of the people. It's going to take time, but Kashmiris have now found clarity in their politics, and I think we are going to make it one day.
But just to bear with me, would you today, despite everything we've discussed of your history, describe yourself as a Kashmiri separatist?
I think I would not like myself to be boxed in these terminologies, because finally it has been the government of India or the Indian narrative over Kashmir that these are mainstream people and these are separatist people. If you talk about legitimacies, who are the people who have the people's legitimacy? Even till now, separatists or those people who did not want to be boxed within the framework of Indian constitution, they had the larger number of people with them. So effectively, they were the political mainstream, and people like us were not the political mainstream. So this entire vocabulary of politics, I think, has now changed in Kashmir. But maybe there will be a vocabulary like resolutionists and those people who now want to be status quoists. I think I would want to be identified with the resolutionists, people who want to see peace in Kashmir.
If I may say so, that's a bit abstract, but let me make it deeply personal. I believe I'm right in saying your own father was killed by militants, separatist militants, because he refused to help them at a particular point. You, therefore, in your family have reasons to be suspicious of the separatist militant movement, but do you fear that Kashmir may return to the blood-soaked era of the 1980s and 1990s when we saw so much violence inside Kashmir?
More than 100,000 people have died in Kashmir in the last 30 years. Thousands of people got displaced, including minority Kashmiri Pandits. My worry is that if Kashmir slips back to early 90s, we will see another phase of bloodshed. 3 generations have already got destroyed. I do not want to see few more generations getting destroyed. I just hope that, like Japanese, Kashmiris will also now go back to their resiliency, stand up, rebuild their houses, rebuild their ideas, rebuild their hearts and minds, rebuild whatever has been lost and lost. This has been more like a nuclear catastrophe for all of us.